Welcome to season 15 of the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week's episode traces the journey of a junior player through her dad's eyes from the beginning days of playing tennis to her recent college commitment. And I'm not going to spoil it, but you'll have to listen to the episode to find out where she's going. But I have with me Greg Gilbert, who has been a longtime follower of Parenting Aces. We've been in contact, for over a decade now. And he and his family live in the Atlanta area, and they have 3 kids. Their youngest has pursued tennis at the highest level. And Greg reached out to me several weeks ago and said, we're coming to the end of this journey. Do you think it might be helpful to do a podcast where I share some of the things that we went through along the way? And I was like, absolutely. What I love about the Gilbert story is that Ariana, the daughter, has always been a very good tennis player. She wasn't a phenom. She wasn't one of these kids that was identified at 6 years old as the next world number one, but she has made steady improvement. She has overcome several challenges along the way. And I think you are going to find this story very interesting and very helpful as you go through your own tennis journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Greg Gilbert. Greg Gilbert, it is so great to have you on the podcast. This has been one that we've been talking about for a few weeks now, and I'm super excited that we're finally getting the chance to record.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Excited to be here with you. I think we've known each other for quite a while, so to be able to do a podcast with you, it's like, all right, man, there's a legit part of this. I can maybe share something now. That'd be awesome.
Well, what I love so much about your story is, and let me just preface this by saying, your daughter, Ariana, is a senior in high school this year. Y'all are coming to the end of the junior tennis, but getting ready to dive into the college tennis. And I think a lot of the things that you guys have gone through as a family will resonate with a lot of our community. And so that's one of the reasons I'm super excited for this conversation. And to those of you watching or listening to this, please take notes. And Greg is super approachable. So I know that at the end of this, if you have questions or just want to discuss some stuff that you're going through, Greg is super nice about offering his time and his experiences up to others that are going through the process. So, Greg, I'm just putting that out there to start. But I want to just kind of jump off with this because as you and I were talking offline, you said to me, there are a lot of things we did well, but there are a lot of things we made mistakes on along the way. And somehow I feel like learning from the mistakes may be more valuable. And so before we talk about anything else, can you identify maybe the top 2, 3, 5 things that you wish you guys had done differently that you feel like may have changed the way this journey went for you and for Ariana?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because it may or may not have changed the journey. It might have. Sometimes the mistakes will. But I think one of the biggest things was taking it too seriously too early. She's 18 now. And it's funny, she's been playing some of these PTT tournaments. I think it's called Professional Tennis Tournament, I guess. And they're awesome. And she's playing college players or girls about to go to college. Some are in their mid-20s. And even some of the higher level USTA at age 17 and 18, you look around and you go, it just feels different because a lot of these girls are going to college. And so it's less about who's winning the tournament. It's more of a focus on like, no, you're developing. And I think before that, it was, I don't know what the goal was. The goal was to be awesome, or what have you. And I think there was just a lot of pressure. There's a lot more pressure in 12 and under and 14 and under and 16 and under. Parents are more stressed out. Girls are trying to figure out how to interact with one another. And I just feel like a lot of that just kind of goes away. And you're like, oh, that didn't really matter. And one of the things I tell Ariana is I go, when she's, maybe getting stressed or something, I'm like, think back to what would you tell yourself in that, 12 and under or 14 and under tournament? And you kind of go, yeah, it's not that important. That was years ago. It's not, yeah, you want to do well, you want to develop, you want to learn. But in terms of like intensity or stress or anxiety or the extra baggage, I almost would call it, to just, I mean, I think we have enjoyed the journey, but I think we could have enjoyed the journey more if there would have been less pressure and less stress. I think as a dad, and I think coaches, I think parents, too much information. I think if you're sharing too much, I mean, I'm not in my teens anymore. There's only so much I can retain if I'm learning something new, right? And so if they're playing and they're getting too much information, or every shot is being analyzed, every mistake, or hey, they did something well, but here's how you could have done it better. We were with one of her friends, and her friend had been with this coach for a while, and they were playing a practice match, which is awesome. And the coach was just overload of information. And I know that I used to be like that. And I've learned to filter myself, and I've learned that that's not healthy and good. And I was kind of shared that with a friend's dad later on. And just because I didn't think it was really healthy for her, she made a great shot. And it was almost like, yeah, you could have done that better. Right. Which that can be the case sometimes. But in terms of like, are they enjoying? Is there too much stress? Is there too much information? Or even information at the wrong time? Like they're about to go on court for a tournament. And again, this is where you want them to play free and play with confidence. And if you're giving them too many details, that would be a negative. So I think also the third thing I would say, Lisa, is I expected to see things in tournaments that I hadn't seen yet in practice matches. For instance, if she's playing a certain player or expecting her to play a certain way, have we seen her play that well? I mean, so a lot of the tennis journey can be training and doing drills and going to an academy. And then, but are they actually playing the sport? If they're playing the sport and they're playing people, then you get to see how are they doing with what they've been learning with their strokes, what they've been learning about the game. But if, and so at a time later on in her development, she was playing more practice matches. That was super helpful. And we tracked all of them the same, which may sound a little bit over the top, but hey, tennis parents are over the top, right? Can be. But that was helpful because it was like, it didn't just matter what the tournament matches were. We try to say anybody, anytime, anywhere, all matches are the same. There's a certain stress and anxiety that can come from tournaments, but just enjoy them all, compete at the all. But for me as a parent on these other matches, it gave me perspective that like, hey, if I've seen her do well here, then that might translate to a tournament. If I haven't seen her put some of these things in the play in an actual practice match, then why would I expect her to all magically go and put it all together in a tournament? I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I think that's something that really helped give me perspective and go, she's not going to own it in a tournament if I haven't seen her own it as a tool in her toolbox in terms of her play and her weapons and her game, if I haven't seen her put it into action consistently in another place.
No, I think it's all about managing expectations, right? And it's the player has to manage expectations, but we as parents also have to manage expectations. And if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, it's as the parent, I know I'm investing all this time and money in my child's lessons and development and equipment and all these things. And so as a result of that, maybe I'm thinking that when she walks on the match court, she's going to be playing like Iga Swiatek, when I've never seen her play like Iga Swiatek ever. Why would I have that expectation? Maybe I need to rein that in a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a really important point that in a lot of tennis circles, players aren't playing the game. They're not playing the sport. So they may go to drills and they may do drills. They may go hit. And even we've had struggles through the years of even trying to get other players, usually me talking to another parent when they were younger, to kind of go play a practice match. Right. It was like, no, go ahead. It was like, but she actually needs matches. Like, and so I think that's a valuable lesson, was just the value of playing the sport, value of getting actual matches, or at least a set in. But if you can get a full practice match in, whatever that looks like for the time you have allotted, can be super valuable in their development, because, how are you going to grow in the sport if you're not actually playing it along the way? But the academy world some of them do a good job of that. They'll have certain days where they do that, but a lot of them may not. And so I think as a parent, let your kid play the sport and then let them see how they have it. You're going to watch what they do and see what they're learning and how they're growing in it. And then you start to kind of learn a lot more about where they're at. And I think you also set better expectations for yourself, for the child. And right now, I mean, talking to parents of just like, hey, for me, how I needed to dial it back. I don't think we put too much pressure on her. I was asking her before this, hey, when did we do well? And she's like, you didn't put too much pressure. And I'm like, man, you don't know what we were talking about behind the scenes. Because I think what I've learned is most tennis parents are super driven. And they're intense. And there are ones out there, I'm like, man, they're intense. But I also see there's this balance of drive and intensity that's healthy. And there's where drive and the intensity kind of starts to steer the car off the road a little bit, right?
Yeah,
So
for
I think
sure.
one of the things we did well was really shield her and filter her from our drive,
That's
and
good.
just wanting to
It's
help.
important.
Yeah.
And going back to the practice match thing, and people that have been watching or listening to this podcast for a while hear me talk about the importance of practice matches all
Mm,
the time from a developmental standpoint. But, you know, the other side of that is for the most part, practice matches don't cost you any money. It
yeah.
is a
Right.
very economical way for your child to get more tennis in without it impacting the bottom line. And I think for a lot of people who are struggling with how to
Yeah.
finance this whole journey, they forget that's such a great piece of the developmental journey that
Yeah.
oftentimes gets overlooked. You've got to incorporate that if you want your child, like you're saying, Greg, to
Yeah.
actually play the sport, not just hit tennis balls over the net.
Absolutely. Yeah. Completely agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So let's back up a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit. Do you say Ariana, and I've been saying Ariana. I'm saying it
Either is
different.
fine. Either is fine.
Okay.
Usually we
I
call
don't
her
want to mess
Ariana,
up
but
her name.
some of her best friends in the world call her Ariana. So
Okay. Um, so I want to just back up and talk about her journey, where it started, what age was she, and what did that look like at the beginning?
So she's our third child, which I think is relevant. I think the age of your child and the personality of your child also play into this a lot. She's our third child, and her just how she's built, super coachable, super teachable. You tell her to do it, and she was actually would a, not just hear it, but be able to put it into practice. That was kind of a gift of hers. Being the youngest children usually take orders from everybody else, whereas the oldest child's ordering everybody else around. So she was used to kind of having people kind of tell her or encourage her or whatever. Our older sister, we joke about that all the time. But she also had an athletic ability that was very recognizable early on. And I think all of our kids did, and she certainly did. And she played soccer early on and did taekwondo and some other things, and I think sometimes as parents you're trying to be like, we want them to get different exposure for different reasons to life and to learn who they are. And her brother was doing taekwondo, so we were able to kind of get her in there. But even in that, she was probably the more aggressive one. Right, when she played soccer, there was a little boy that scored more goals than her, but she was right below him, and they were the ones that scored most of the goals. So she just had this competitive drive thing from a very early age. And so older brother had been playing tennis, so she started playing tennis in our neighborhood in Tucker, Georgia. And Mikhail, awesome guy, and he was kind of her early tennis coach. And he had coached Russian nationals, and he was just an encourager. And the Russian style was something we still laugh about. But she just took to it right away. And
How old was she at that point? Do you remember?
I mean, she started like 4 or 5. I mean, she was
Okay.
6 years old, something like that. And then I remember his dad had kind of watched some of the juniors that he had coached through the years, and he was like, she's got something special right there, which was just encouraging through the years to hear him tell that story. But she was young when she got started, and I would say we probably started tournaments, I don't know, 7 or 8, probably 8 and under, I would think. I remember going like over to Smoke Rise, which is right down the street there in Tucker, and doing some of those. And so, yeah, early on, she started playing that. She had still been doing some other sports along the way and had other interests, but tennis was definitely part of the mix pretty early on.
Okay, great. And so at that point, is she playing once a week, a couple days a week? Are you out hitting with her? What does that look like?
Great question. And I'm not sure I remember all the details, but I think probably 3 to 4 would be reasonable. It might have been 2 or 3. Probably wasn't more than 3 or 4 a week. Most of that's probably with Mikhail. Might have been a little bit with me. I picked up tennis late in life. I played everything else growing up. So I've kind of learned a ton about tennis, as tennis parents often do. But I was more of hitting with her. She started beating me when she was 10 years old. So I was playing,
Wow.
like flex leagues here in Atlanta. And so I was doing some of those, and she started beating me when she was 10, which you're kind of excited about and you're kind of humiliated by all at the same. Like, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel when my 10-year-old starting to beat me. And she competed with her brother some too. So that was fun. And yeah, so that's kind of what it looked like early on.
And when she really started playing tournaments on a regular basis, and I'm going to just assume that was closer to 10, 11,
Yeah.
just because of the way USTA tournaments are set up. And I, I mean, there were UTR events in Atlanta around that time as well. Was that part of the process? Was junior team tennis part of the process, or was it strictly USTA for you guys?
It was strictly STA. UTR was not, it was around, but it wasn't a thing that we were really aware of at 10. I don't know when we got, she did I mean, you and I were talking about the Little Mo. She did the Little Mo out in California, Newport Beach, which was fun. She did a local one out in Marietta when it was kind of coming through. So she did a couple of those, which were a lot of fun to experience. But yeah, she started really just primarily USTA training, playing, and doing USTA events through the ranks and through the years. Was pretty
Mm-hmm.
much what her journey was early on.
And at what point, I mean, you said you traveled for Little Mo. At what point were you traveling for the USTA tournaments? Because this is a question I get asked a lot. You guys are based in the Atlanta area. There are tons of tournaments available to kids pretty much
There
every
are,
week.
there are.
Um, but at some point, she started traveling. So, what was the determining factor for
Yeah, I
you
mean, a lot of
guys?
the travel there was probably like to Rome or to Macon. Not insignificant, but also not like, some people that live in Mississippi. She's got friends in Mississippi and Louisiana and Arkansas, and they don't have as much, going on there locally. They have some things, but yeah, she was more of those kinds of tournaments that she started, probably 10 and 12 under, I would say, for the
Mhm.
most part. She might have done some more local ones around 8 and under. And just trying to pace those out with life. And we had other kids and other things going on, and what makes sense, for her to do, even from how much tennis do you want to play and is wise for her to play. But I think if I were to kind of give any guidance to parents out there, it would be take advantage of everything that's local that you can, and especially now that you have UTR tournaments coming along. I think a good model for what to play is, I heard it said that you play kind of 1/3 people that maybe you're supposed to be, which that's a whole thing, of how to think about that. Like, actually a big deal. Some people downplay when you win, when you're supposed to win. And I've seen sports long enough to know how many people don't win versus people they're supposed to win. And nowadays people look at UTRs. Well, you're supposed to. Well, and we just said anybody, anytime, anywhere. And she was at a recent tournament, and the lowest UTR she played was one of the biggest battles she played. And she doesn't really like looking at UTRs because it messes up her mind, because she goes on, oh, I'm supposed to be this person. And then when they provide resistance and they're trying hard and that maybe they're doing well, then it could go, oh, you can kind of tighten up. And it's just so, but anyway, playing a third versus people that you're, supposed to beat or whatever, and then a third that are more similar, and then a third up. So you're getting
Mhm.
good exposure. If you're always playing people that you beat, that's good for confidence. That's good maybe for developing your game, but maybe you're not being tested to kind of find out what your weaknesses are. Um, and so like when I've played before, man, if I play somebody a lot better than me, they right away expose your weaknesses. And that's really, really valuable when you care about learning and growing and developing. So I think that's a good model, as well as being able, like we said, anybody, anytime, anywhere, being willing to play the sport there,
Yeah.
nighttime, whose court, doesn't matter, versus who, really just being willing to kind of play the sport and put things into practice, I think is very valuable. And it's like you said, it can be free or close to free to do that. And there's a lot of learning that can come from that, as well as a lot of fun. I mean, the joy of the game of just playing it, right?
Right.
And a lot you can learn in wins, and there's a lot you can learn in losses. So either way, there's a lot to learn.
some of my most joyful moments as a tennis parent when my son was in junior tennis was taking him to practice matches and just sitting in my car in the parking lot while he played. And, the kids would put music on, they would goof around. The side change was always very entertaining to watch. And I loved it because that joy for tennis and that joy for competing and trying new things all came out in those practice matches and rarely came out in a tournament setting.
Well, the joy of competing, right, is a big one. And Ariana has played, and here's something that's kind of like to break a mental barrier that maybe some people have. Play adults. She's played, females that play Alta, here in Atlanta, big tennis group that they have, or played. One of her friends' dad is an annoying player to play. He slices and cuts. He played college. He knows where every ball's supposed to go. He defends. Drives her crazy. And I'm like, playing Brandon is so valuable for her game. And we talk about still that as a benchmark of playing that. So it doesn't even have to be, other students or other players the same age. It can be other adults. And especially as they grow and their game grows, finding those players that can provide a variety of styles can be so valuable for the development of their game and who they are and what they need to work on. So now when she gets sliced, I'm like, she may or may not make that shot, but she's seen that a lot before.
Yeah, she's had some practice with it.
Yeah, I love she's had a lot of practice.
Well, Greg, you sent me some great notes ahead of today's conversation, and I really want to make sure we cover a lot of what you sent to me. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just read your bullet point and I'm going to let you talk about why you felt that was important for us to talk about today. So the first one that you sent me is tennis is a game of attrition. What does that mean to you, and what has that meant in Ariana's journey?
So when Ariana was young, I was at an academy. This gentleman, his daughter was probably college age, maybe 18, 19, 20, and just talking about her pathway. And he said that quote to me, and it stuck with me forever, which was, tennis is a game of attrition. And I think that's true. You can apply that to all of life, any industry you're in. It's a game of attrition, meaning who's going to be there in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, who's still going to be in it. And I was like, man. And as I unpacked that, attrition being people falling away along the way, right, over the years.
Right.
And first of all, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of great reasons. And the goal of life is not necessarily play tennis, but it can be a beautiful part of life, right? And for those that want to continue that journey. But if you are a parent, then I think it's important to consider your role in that. And so if you're putting too much pressure on your child, that can lead to one of the two things I think really would be reasons why they would choose to not play. One would be injury, where they can't play. So I think you need to think about load, how much they're putting on their body. Are they preparing? Are they warming up well? Are they cooling down well? And these things can be learned over time. And if you're a new tennis parent, you don't need to know them right away, other than, hey, at some point I need to learn about that. So injury is a big one. You can't do something about every injury. Ariana in 2021 had a back problem that put her out for like 9 months. And, that was frustrating because it knocked out all of her USTA points. And in 2022, she was struggling to get into tournaments. And, it was really tough. And then in 2023, she was in a tournament in another state. And come to find out later, we didn't know it at the time, but she had an aneurysm. And that required brain surgery. And so she now has a titanium plate, 19 titanium screws from April of 2023. And, super scary. And you learn that something like that puts it in perspective that, like, wow, she's alive and she can be here with us and we can enjoy her. I mean, you have like a near-death experience like that. And so just the whole injuries are going to happen. Things are going to happen, some preventable, some not preventable, but that's one reason. The other reason is, I think, motivation. And motivation could be a word that if you unpack it, other priorities may come up, relationships may come up, other priorities. I know one of my friend's daughters started picking up volleyball. Another one, she picked up, playing golf. And so different things came up like that. But I think underneath the hood of attrition is, are they enjoying the sport?
Yeah.
And I also had this underlying theme that I knew made sense, but I didn't always know how to get there, which was winning is fun and not winning is not as much fun. So
Yeah.
when I said a third and a third, earlier, I think what the kind of would say is winning 60% over time is kind of fun. If you're winning 30%, which means you're losing a lot more than you're winning, that's not really fun. So I think as a parent, it should be aware of that. So if they're at a place, man, get them some matches where they can win. Get them some matches where they can enjoy winning, right? Because winning, I think, is fun. And we joke about it because, if she loses a tough match and then she wins, sometimes I'll joke with her. I'm like, winning's a lot more fun than losing, isn't it? Or whatever. And it is, but also, are they out there with their friends? Like, tennis can be a lonely sport. And do they have community? Like, if you're going to a tournament, it's a beautiful time for her and I, or her mother, Lisa, and her to spend time together, enjoy the location that they're at, if there's something for them to do there. But also, who can they connect with? Like, tennis can be a lonely sport. So during the week or at tournaments, one of the great things about Atlanta is we have lots of academies. One of the challenges of Atlanta is we have lots of academies. So coaches are rotating, players are rotating. So you might be with a friend for a season and then they go away to another tournament or another place or what have you. So relationships, so like, where are the relationships depending upon what that looks like? And Lisa had made the decision to homeschool and with me, all of our kids. So we just did that as a decision in life, not really tennis, but it definitely had implications of tennis. So leaning into more relationships was an extra special purpose for us. So I think on the game of attrition, it's like injury, there's things to learn there, and then motivation, fun, community. Are they enjoying the journey? Are they enjoying when they go out on the court? Are they ever cutting up and laughing and having fun? And I think probably back on my mistakes is I kind of had in Maria Sharapova's dad or Andre Agassi's dad kind of mentality in my mind. Like, it's almost like a Russian mindset, right? Of like, because she had the Russian coach and we love him to death, but it was almost like so hardcore. It's only about tennis and there's like no quit, no let up. And I just think in America, it's not really, we're not really like that. There's lots of options over here. And I think you need to be cognizant of that and make that switch to kind of go, no, like, they can enjoy the people that they're playing against. They could warm up with them before they go play them in a match. It'll be okay.
Right.
They can have fun. They can connect with them. And so they can really enjoy this journey and not take it too seriously, whether from the practice to the matches along the way. Because I think ultimately at the end of it, that feeds back into attrition. If they're not having fun, they're losing all the time. Those are hard things to deal with. But obviously there can be seasons. And what's funny is, back in January, February of 2025, Ariana had lost, I don't know, some matches in a tournament or whatever. And she literally said this in like an epic quote of all time: "I'm just not getting any better." And from that point, not that UTR is everything, but it's just an indicator. She was an 8.2 UTR then, and now she's approaching a 9.5. And from that point forward, she went on a run. And it's just, there are seasons where she was joking about it, where maybe you lose 2 or 3 tournaments in a row and you're not just doing well. But, I think tying into motivation is there's a powerful feeling of momentum. So where's the momentum? Where's the improvement? And even if they're losing, they're improving somewhere. No matter what's happening, you can find ways to highlight, to celebrate that they're getting better, that they're improving. And when we feel improving, then we don't feel stuck, right? So when we feel like we're improving, we feel like we're getting better, we feel like we're making progress, that whatever we're doing is translating in some way. And again, it doesn't even have to be that they actually won. It could be that we noticed something we were working on and they started to do that better than they ever had before. So on that, that's a lot.
I think that's that's an important point though, Greg, because you talk about, it's more fun to win than to lose. And that's absolutely true. And figuring out how to balance that with having a growth mindset, right? Focusing on improving as opposed to outcomes is, to me, one of the hardest parts of having your kid pursue anything at a high level. But tennis, especially because these ratings and rankings are updated every week, they're at your fingertips constantly and in your face constantly. But at the same time, it is important to recognize what keeps our kids wanting to go back day after day after day. And winning is certainly part of that.
Well, and I think even that is how I changed even when I still do some coaching things with her, just because my role has been, I've heard what all of these coaches, and we've had some amazing coaches like over the years, amazing, and some great ones even now. But like I've kind of known who she was identity wise. And I think for us, every player has an identity and you need to learn what that is. And I'll have strengths to it. You want to elevate the strengths and then you need to adjust. So for her, she wanted to hit the smack out of the ball every single time. So, okay, she has power. She's got aggressive mindset in some ways. But she needed to make more balls, right? That's kind of what she needed to do. So you got to adjust. But I think for me, in my role, when I would go on court with her, is I started kind of going, man, are we having fun? Am I making her smile? Are we cutting up? Like, just are we having fun out there and making fun games out of it too? And so you can, we set matches, but you can play games that have goals and winning or losing without playing a match as well. And those are valuable also. Like even though I can't play that well anymore, not that I could ever play that great, we'll do this game where I'll do second serves. And it's a second serve game. And if I'm winning a second serve game, it's a problem because I can't play very well. And what that usually means is she taking care of, quality shots? So there's games like that you can play, but I always, even in that, I'll either rib her a little bit in a competitive way, be like, hey, I'm coming back. I'm going to take over. Here I come, so, or whatever, but just have fun with it. And I think that was something I started to incorporate a lot more later on, which was super helpful, along the way.
Well, I think especially as they get into teenage years, right, where there's so many options to have fun
right.
that don't have anything to do with tennis. And
right.
You want the tennis to provide that fun as well so that they continue to choose tennis as opposed to choosing something else. And it's a big challenge. And it doesn't mean that every day has to be kicks and giggles. It doesn't mean that every practice should be that way, but there has to be some element of fun at some point. And I think you were really smart to recognize that. I want to kind of use this to transition into another point that you sent to me, which was practice should be harder than matches. And I think this is such an important one. And I want you to talk about what that means to you and why you felt like we needed to talk about that today.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, that's kind of I think some of the best coaches, I think, like Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, John Wooden, they would try to structure practices in a way where it was just harder. So for instance, even, there've been times before where maybe we had somebody she was hitting with, and this guy, Sean, and he would, so the two of us would be hitting against her. And, if we're doing what we need to do, she's running all over the place and it's really, really hard. Right. Or we even play 2-on-1s or something like that. And not that we did that all the time, but just having some of those elements where it's harder for her, or if she's playing me, like even when I do the second serve, I can't double fault. So she's going to have to, she's not getting that benefit. Whereas in a match, she'll get somebody to double fault against her. Right. And that sort of thing. And even maybe who's she hitting with, and if she's got an opportunity to hit with some people that challenge her, get some of that in, not all the time, but in the mix along the way, and kind of show her what the development is. And even being able to hang in some of those rallies or play some of those players can be good. Something else that we've done is, there's an idea of one line risk. And so on the one line risk, just being like, you want to not miss in the net. So that one you want to take out. And then you basically miss the direction you're going. So if you're going deep, straight through the court, you want to miss deep. That's your one line that you want to miss. If you're going wide, you're trying to hit like a line break or something, then you want to miss wide. But if you're going deep, you don't want to miss wide. That's kind of the idea. And so she's had, one of the things we've worked on over there is less net misses, right? And I think it's probably the number one for most people. But so we did that thing, and a lot of people do this, where they put a rope above the net. And so now working on the margin of error over the net. So if you think about playing games with a margin of error, that's harder than playing with a lower net. Or if she's historically gone too close to the lines. And so, one of our coaches, we brought in the lines where he was playing games where the lines were tighter in, or because of her style, a lot of times the match would be on her racket. And so it was like, you're missing on your approaches, or you're missing on your attacking shots or finishing shots. So playing it where the coach is just getting everything back, and she's really working on that. So there's a lot of different ways maybe to do that, but it's like, what are the elements that we can bring in to the practices that make it more hard and challenging? And I think Richard, with Richard Williams, I think he had people intentionally cheat on his daughters. That may be a little bit extreme, but it's kind of that idea of like, hey, get used to it, right? Because sometimes that stuff happens in the real world as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that concept. It's so funny. I've told the story before, but when my dad, I think it was like 10 years ago, he was taking a tennis lesson. My dad's been playing tennis his whole life. And he was hitting with the coach, and the coach said, "You never hit the ball in the net." My dad said, "Why would I do that?"
Right.
Like, well, I don't ever want to fall in the net either, but I tend to do it quite often, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
I love this idea of, let's make the net higher in practice and teach you to give yourself even more margin, so that when you're in a match situation, the net's way lower. It's way easier to make those balls. I think that's such a great idea.
Yeah, I saw an Instagram video the other day, and there's a bunch of good ones out there. But I was watching this amazing rally, and there's probably a 13, 14 ball rally, and one ball in that whole rally came close to the line. Everything else was 3 or 4 feet in from the side, or more. And so if you watch Djokovic, a lot of times he's hitting his key spots on either side, and usually never coming anywhere close to the line. He will on occasion, but that's not 70 to 80% of what he does. So, just learning, but you got to put that into practice, and you got to rep that in order to really get that. So that's where bringing the court in, raising the net, for her was really helpful.
I love it. I love it. All right. Another one that you talk about is the mental strength framework.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because that is kind of the overarching theme of our season this year. Really talking about the mental side from the player side, but also from our side as the parents.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it starts, if you're in a tournament environment, it starts with the chatter before you go on the court. Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, they both talk about rat poison, which is what is the ideas that destroy your mental fortitude. And one of them is when your good friend who's trying to be encouraging says, "Who are you playing?" "Oh, you're going to win. Oh, you're going to." And we were like, she knows that's rat poison, which means what? Like, you need to respect that player. There's 2 things. Respect everybody you play, because they're trying to, they're putting in the work. They're putting in the effort. They came to win. They're not going to try to make it easy on you. So you better respect them. Don't talk to me about UTRs, rankings, anything else. They're coming out there to win, and also respect the fact that when you win, celebrate wins, right? Versus "Oh, well, I was supposed to win." No, it's hard to do that. And then the other is you believe in yourself when you go out there. Yes, they're trying hard, but I believe in my game. They're trying hard, and so I think sometimes players go onto the court and they're better than me. They're the same. They're not as good as me. And right away, they've put themselves in the wrong mindset. So I think that's one is start that you're going to love to compete, and you're going to, one of the things we talk about a lot now is be the grittier player, which means don't expect it to be clean, and don't expect it to be at this high level, because I think you want that for sure. And that'll happen on occasion, but most times that's not going to be there. But if that's what your expectation is and reality is lower, you could be doing really well. You could be in the hunt, and you could be really frustrated with yourself.
Right.
And without a proper perspective. But a couple of things that we're saying right now is mental strength, which is kind of how you carry yourself and the physical reactions that you're having. So knowing that that matters, how am I going to do mentally, when I go out here, and I want to evaluate that on the other side. So strong, but then there's calm, because our anxiety and our stress kind of ramps up through, these matches. And when stressful times come, or when they hit a line, or we think they cheated and they called it the wrong way, or what have you, and we get all rattled, how are you going to get yourself calm? And there's ways of doing that through breathing, through having a technique after each point. So calm matters a lot. So there's a blend between being calm and also having intensity on the court, right? You want to be in that sweet spot between calm and intensity. But then the other one that's really important from a mentality standpoint and being strong mentally is having clarity, right? Confusion is your enemy. And when somebody's making everything, and everything seems to be going, you get, I can't do anything. And if you've ever been in a tournament, a court over, two courts over, or maybe on your court, you're going to hear like, I just can't make a ball, and, or whatever. And you kind of have to have perspective to like clarity. Well, all right, what's this next point? The next point is I'm returning. All right, what's my target on the return? Let me go play this as well as I can. Like, you need to have clarity around what's next. University of Georgia, in their facilities, they have this concept, this acronym WIN, and it's what's important now. It's like, forget what happened, forget what's in the future, what's important right now. And I think you see this a lot with people projecting into the future, especially in tennis, because tennis, you have to close out. There's no running out the clock. There's no somebody else coming and saving you. You've got to close it. And I saw in Delray Beach Open, Tommy Paul, in one game, somebody faced 10 match points, I think. 10. So that means Tommy Paul had 10 match points that he did not convert on. And Ariana and I talk about like the red zone. So it's like in football, you don't necessarily score on your first trip inside the red zone, which is inside the 20-yard line. You may not do it on your second. You may not do it on the third. And I sent her that video, and I'm like, in tennis, you're not restricted to 4 downs. If you don't score on the 4th, you can score on the 5th. You can score on the 10th. You can score on the 20th. Like, just keep trying to knock on that door, keep going after it. So I think there has to be a clarity in the end of like, be calm before the next point, figure out your way of grabbing calm through breathing, through relaxing the body, through letting something go. Djokovic said he probably has more frustrations than, who's talking in an interview. He's like, I have more frustrations than you do, by like, 2 or 3 or 4 times as many. So you're like, well, how could he be mentally strong if he gets frustrated? Well, it was because he lets it go, probably better than anybody in the world, or he uses the energy from that in a powerful way and in a clear way. So I think as it talks about mental clarity or the mental strength, it has to start with having proper expectations, that you respect your opponent, and you also have confidence in yourself and the training that you've been putting in. Expect it to be gritty, expect it to not be clean. Be happy if it is clean, but expect it to not be. Be a gritty player that just wins when things are breaking down and things are going wrong. And every match is a puzzle. Like, every match is a new puzzle to put into place. And something unique and frustrating and confusing is going to happen almost every single match. And there will be matches where maybe they're more straightforward, but most matches have something go wrong in a way that you've never quite experienced before. You got to be ready for that.
Right. Greg, we're talking about from the player's perspective, but what about from your perspective as the parent sitting in the stands watching your kid go through these challenges? What are some of the things that you found helped you and continue to help you find clarity, find calm, all those things?
It's a great question. I think what I just said was a lot easier than the parent sometimes, finding clarity and calm.
Yeah.
It's a hard one, going back to what I said before, my early struggles and the struggles I think a lot of parents have in sports in general. Ariana was at some courts by her house, and she said, because I was asking her some tips, she said, there was a dad who has a 7-year-old daughter, and after every shot, he was giving instructions to her. And he wasn't coaching. She was on the court in the academy or whatever, and he's doing that. And I think you could kind of carry that same energy around a match. And so, I'm a high driver, and so I've got that part of my mentality. So I've also tried to say, what am I projecting? Like, what am I, I'm going, oh my God, I can't believe you missed that, or I'm rolling my eyes, or throwing up my hands, or whatever. I'm like, is that helpful to them? Right? Like, what am I putting on her if I do that? So
Also, is that helpful to you? Is that,
yeah,
do you want to live in this
right. Do I want to
constant
be like that?
state of stress sitting through
Sure.
these matches? No, nobody
Right.
wants that.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
fun.
I think my motivation is probably more for her than it is for myself, but you're exactly right. So even like relaxing and kicking back, especially if it's a big moment, get more relaxed. Whatever that means, like when there's a match app, I think it's called Smash Point. Yeah, Smash Point. Are you familiar with this app?
Mm-mm.
It's when you ask, what do I do? So this one is an easy app that helps me track the score. And at the end, it gives
Okay.
me stats, and she likes the stats. Like that's something that motivates her is the metrics. What was her serve percentage? What was her unforced errors to, to winners or whatever? And so that's something that keeps me busy because I found like it's hard for me to not do something. And
Yeah.
so, and that's also, even when I'm like in a warm up court with her or something, it's hard for me not to say something when I see something. So I've had to learn where to remove myself, where to manage myself, get away from the court, minimize whatever it is. And then during a match, yeah, project good energy, be encouraging, give her energy. I try to give her energy when I feel like she needs it, kind of learning her, but I'm not doing it like out of like without a filter, if that makes sense. And then having something to do can also help me. Sometimes it's just texting my wife the scores, and she does the same thing. She texts me the scores. So that's something else that we can do during a match. But I do think it matters as a coach and as a player how you're presenting who you are in an encouraging way. Again, back to the attrition. How much fun is it if you look over and you always see your parents frustrated? Right. And again, your point, do
Right.
you want to be that parent? But I think there's probably a natural bent towards a lot of people early to be that way. And I think the guidance is, man, try to adjust and filter that as much as you can, because it matters. It matters to you, it matters to your child, and be someone that's supportive. Don't, have proper expectations, and also they're not going to learn, they're not going to become a different player during the middle of a tournament. So if you're talking about even their development of their game, write it down, take notes, because you probably got to do something, and then find the right time later on, either share it with their coach or what have you. And so that's also been healthy, is being able to have a healthy relationship with her coaches. And that's not a given.
No.
That's hard to have. And that's probably a whole nother line of topic, but finding somebody that you feel like really gets where your child is at is really helpful. But for us, because there's been this history of understanding the different aspects of her game and where she's going, I've always needed somebody that I can respect, but also somebody that respects my voice. And not everybody does that. And I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, it's been helpful to be with some amazing coaches and, that really are like value our input. They're like, no, I'm not, they're not expecting me to know everything, but they are saying, hey, I think there is something that you've seen that you can add that's helpful and valuable to this journey.
One thing I want to just point out in all of what we've been talking about the last 5 minutes or so, Greg, is this is a process for you as the parent as much as it is a process for your daughter as the player.
Yeah.
Nobody expects tennis
Yeah.
parents to show up at a tournament with their 9 or 10-year-old and behave perfectly that first time.
Right.
There's a learning curve, and yes, there are the outliers and whatever.
Right.
They're not listening to this because they already know everything. But for most of us, we have to learn how to behave properly, how to use the relaxation techniques that we're, encouraging our kids to pick up on. We benefit from those, which in turn benefits our child. So again, it's a process for our child, but it's also a process for us.
Yeah.
And we need to give ourselves grace around this. And I've
Right.
said this a million times, but you're gonna screw up as the parent. It's just gonna happen because we're human. Own it, talk to your child about it if it warrants that, apologize if it warrants that, and then do the work to make sure that you don't repeat that same mistake again. And, keep doing the work alongside your child.
Mm.
It benefits all of us at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely
Yeah.
agree 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, we just have a few minutes left. So
Yeah.
I really want to talk about Ariana's college recruiting and the fact that she came back from this really scary surgery
Mm.
and had to pretty much immediately jump into selling herself. Well, not selling, that sounds terrible. Sorry, let me back that up. She
Yeah.
had to immediately jump into figuring out how to market herself to these college coaches to make herself recruitable, even though she didn't have the rankings or the ratings to back up what she knew she brought to the table.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, I think it's kind of, again, tennis is life and life is tennis, right? And so I think there's what can you do? You do what you can do. And I think for that, I remember winter nights of going 2024 to 2025. And I mean, we were starting at the very bottom, if you will. I mean, she'd had a few conversations, but and it was just notifying coaches that, hey, we're there. We'd love if you're around. Love for you to come over there and see, and then some of them were there and maybe we heard back a little bit. And so that was a part of it, specifically reaching out, specifically coming up for tournaments that may be relevant and just letting them know that we're there, you know what I mean? And she's there, and for them to maybe see her play for a little bit or maybe meet her or what have you. So that's kind of where it started. From there, I think something that she had to do, just kind of not necessarily like some girls that are higher than her or whatever at the time didn't necessarily have to do this, but she took a lot of unofficial visits. And so like we went to Vanderbilt and did Belmont and did Lipscomb and did Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilt coach spoke to her, was super kind. And so talked to all three coaches and went to one, so, and that was really valuable, so that they could learn more about Ari and we could learn more about them, but also in our discovery, and Ariana's discovery of what is it I want. And, you can talk about things like a coach or players or campus, but until you start to go see them and kind of put eyes on them, see what the culture's like, how do they interact? And for her, she really wanted development. And so that was even interesting, is to watch a practice. And there were some practices where like they're going on for a while and the coach is not giving any instruction. And you go like, well, there's a lot of practices and maybe this isn't the one where they do this. But then you also go, man, it seems like some of those things should have been spoken into a little bit. But you learn that whatever it is you want, you're starting to learn that from the visits that you take. And man, campuses are different, teams are different, coaches are different. And so I think just trying to, depending upon where people are on their journey, we definitely knew we needed to hustle it a little bit, if you will. And so that's kind of what we did. And she tried to make herself available and try to see, but also for her own learning, and then gratefully in that same time period, her game was continuing to develop and grow. And then she had, some really strong results in 2025 leading into 2026. But yeah, those would be the two big things. And from the first call that she had with a coach, when I was overhearing it, to like the 20th or whatever it had, well, it's probably more than that. Her confidence and how she developed in terms of just asking questions, receiving it. Actually, probably, she had probably early on had a list of questions, and later on she knew what questions she wanted to ask. She'd done it so much. So that's growth and development in her. And for somebody that was a little bit more shy into herself, not as comfortable with that, it really was a growth and development within her. And we've really seen her confidence grow through it. And so that's been great. And then, she was super grateful to get a full offer from FSU. And for a while, they were kind of looking at her as a walk-on. And we're like, I don't know if we want to do the walk-on after this whole journey. And but they spent a lot of time with her, and I was surprised by the amount of time that they spent watching her. I'm like, y'all are doing this for a walk-on. But she went and had just a phenomenal visit. Loved the team, loved the coaches. My wife asked her halfway through, said, so what are you thinking? She goes, I want to wait till the end. And she got to the end and Lisa goes, okay, so what did you think? She's like, I loved everything about it. But then she was sad, but she was like, but I don't have an offer. And it was a few days later, a week later, and she got an offer. But but she had had a lot of visits and had a lot of experiences that I think led to that. And not that that's everybody's story. I think one of the most important things is really trusting that everybody's path is unique. Everyone's path is different. So we looked at others' pathways just to learn what are pathways, but you still have to know, like, ours is probably not going to be like any one of those. And you may have whatever plan you think of development and what it may look like, but it's going to look different for almost everybody. And so even versus your own plan, it's going to look different. So really just trusting how life comes along in the journey, the twists and the turns, and even the devastations and the heartaches and the heartbreaks. Embrace those as just a part of being alive and being a competitor and, whatever it is, being a human, and really enjoy those, curveballs that you get along the way, because at the end is what you and I talked about earlier. Champions adjust, right? And that's true of life, and that's true of tennis. And Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. Right? Yeah, that's true of a tennis match, and that's true of a tennis journey.
And as a tennis parent as well, because, we know that injuries are part of youth sports, but we never think that something devastating is going to happen to our child. You guys went through something so scary with your daughter. You don't plan for that. You can't plan for that. But figuring it out, being malleable, and being willing to come up with ways to help her not only recover physically, but recover emotionally, build her confidence back, and get herself back out on the practice court and eventually the match court. And now look, she's been offered a full ride to Florida State University for next year. I mean, what an incredible story. And a lot of that is due to Ariana's tenaciousness, and is that a word? Tenacity, maybe?
It is. Let's go with it.
Yeah, let's go with it. And her love of the game, and her determination to see this to the next level, but also the support that you and your wife, Lisa, are offering her, and the encouragement that you're offering her, and the relationship that you guys have built with one another, to have that trust that together we can get through this and help you reach these goals that you've set. So, I mean, massive congratulations to all of you, to Ariana certainly, but also to you and Lisa for sticking by her, and for being willing to pivot along the journey to make sure that the whole family had the experience that you wanted for them, that it was happy, that it was goal oriented, but also flexible, and that when you hit those bumps, you figured out a way over them. And I just think that's awesome. Greg, thank you so much for sharing your journey.
Of course.
If our viewers or listeners wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that? And we'll put this information in the show notes on our website.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my email is Greg S. Gilbert, S as in Scott, at yahoo.com. So that's my personal email. That would probably be best. Greg S. Gilbert at yahoo.com. And
great.
You can reach me there.
Awesome. We'll have that link in the show notes on our website on ParentingAces.com. Greg, thank you. Best of luck to Ariana as she finishes out her senior year and transitions into college tennis. Cannot wait to hear about her experience next year down at Florida State. And just I'm so grateful to you for sharing all of this with us. And to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces.